This video is a preview of our course lesson. Please visit myconsultingcoach.com to access the full version. Building a problem-driven structure is a very important aspect of a case interview. In this video, we will go over this concept in detail. Let's start with why structure matters. As outlined in some of the previous videos, all cases can be solved using a four-step approach. Identify the problem, build your problem-driven structure, lead the analysis, and provide recommendations. We have explained in detail how to identify the problem in the previous video. We cannot stress the importance of this step enough. It is crucial. If you get it wrong, you will fail the case. In fact, this is the second most common cause of candidates failing cases. Once the problem has been identified, a solution needs to be proposed. Here is where good consultants come in. They manage to go from the problem to the solution. But how do they do it? With the problem identified, you should next move to structure it, or, to put it more simply, you should break it down. This helps us more easily understand what the drivers of the problem are and therefore what the potential solutions might be. You can approach this task in two ways. There are several case systems on the market which claim that all problems can be forced into a few existing ready-made frameworks. So all you should do is force-fit the problem into one of these generic frameworks, right? Wrong. This is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Each case is different and needs its own structure. This is what we know to be true at My Consulting Coach. There are no shortcuts. With our problem-driven method, we teach you how to break down each problem by developing a tailored structure, exactly like practicing consultants do in real life. This will require a deeper thought process, but it will ensure you tackle the right problem with the right approach and provide a tailor-made solution to the case at hand. The key to solving any complicated problem is to break it down into smaller, simpler subproblems to create an easy-to-follow roadmap to the solution. This is the structure. It is almost like a divide-and-conquer approach. By analyzing these smaller subproblems, we can find an actionable hypothetical solution to the overall case problem. So why does having a structure matter? A structure helps you to find solutions by understanding what questions to ask and how to advance the case. Communicate with your interviewer. The structure will help you guide the interviewer through your thought process and allows them to help you if you get stuck. And you feel comfortable and in control. You always know where you are and where to go next. This helps calm your nerves. Let's recap what we have seen in some of our earlier videos. There are two main possible case focuses: issue-based cases and cases where you need to support strategic decisions. Structure is the key to solving both of these types of cases. The objective of an issue-based case is to solve a specific problem. Examples of such case problems include declining profitability, low productivity, and inefficient operations. Such cases can be broadly clustered into two subgroups: cases where you need to identify the root cause of a problem, such as, for example, identifying the reasons for an increase in the high school dropout rate, and solution-based cases, where the focus is brainstorming about potential solutions to a problem, such as reducing the high school dropout rate. Whilst the two groups of cases have different primary objectives, in both, the objective is to 1. Identify the root cause of the issue, and 2. To come up with a solution. The objective of a strategic decision-based case could be one of two kinds. The first is making a strategic decision, for example, market entry, product launch, or M&A. The second possible objective is to provide support for strategic decisions, for example, giving estimates, valuations, etc. Examples of strategic decision-based cases are those concerning market entry, product launch, and M&A. Again, such cases can be broadly clustered into two subgroups: decision-based, such as an M&A case where the objective is to identify the best decision, and information-based, such as an estimate, where the objective is to provide information. As we'll see, building a sound structure is essential for both issue-based and strategic decision-based cases. Let's now focus in on issue-based cases first. In an issue-based case, the structure takes you to the root cause of the problem. Let's look at an example. Our client is a lemonade stand that has seen its profitability declining. How can you help them? These case structures are best handled in an issue tree format. This structure keeps breaking each problem down into further subproblems. The main problem in this case is that profitability is declining. You can break profitability down into revenues minus costs. Let's explore revenues first. Revenues are a function of number of glasses of lemonade and price per glass. Number of glasses is further a function of the number of clients and number of glasses purchased per client. The number of clients is a function of number of lemonade clients in town and the percentage of clients coming to the stall. Now let's look at costs. The overall cost would be equal to variable cost, which would be the cost of lemons plus fixed cost. Fixed cost would be equal to staff cost plus utilities and maintenance. An issue-based case structure will allow you to break down the problem, investigate, with the help of the interviewer, what has changed, pinpoint the root cause of the case issue, and therefore find a solution. For this section, we will focus only on breaking the problem down. In issue-based cases, a structure gets you closer to the root cause of the problem and makes identifying the solution very easy. For example, in the lemonade stall case, in order to restore profitability and solve the client's problem, you should first understand where it is coming from. Using this structure, you might hypothetically find out that the decline in profit is due to a decline in revenue, then that the decline in revenue is driven by lower units sold, and that this is in turn due to fewer customers, since on average customers consume the same number of glasses each. Then diving further, you understand that although nothing seems to have changed in the overall demographics and tastes in town, it looks like your stall is receiving fewer customers, implying that customers are going to alternative stalls. As we can see, then once you get to the root cause of a problem, identifying a solution becomes intuitive. In solving this case, you could break the problem down further and investigate the reasons why customers prefer competitors to us before coming up with a solution to that initial issue. We will learn more about how to do this in our next video on how to lead the analysis. In strategic decision-based cases, the structure helps in pinpointing decision drivers. Let's look at this through an example. Our client is a pharma company considering the acquisition of a competitor with a promising pipeline. How should they think about performing the acquisition? Here, the main problem is whether the acquisition is generating a positive value for our client, which implies determining the value of future earnings from the acquisition and the acquisition price. Again, we can use an issue tree structure to identify the subproblems. The net present value of the acquisition is the present value of future earnings minus the acquisition price. The present value of future earnings can be further divided into the present value of earnings from existing drugs plus the present value of expected earnings from the pipeline plus any synergies. The present value of expected earnings from the pipeline is a function of present value of earnings from pipeline times their probability of success. This tree structure will help you identify the subproblems, such as acquisition price, the value of future earnings from the acquisition, or the average probability of success of new products. A key to note in this structure is that all decision drivers are clear and interconnected. This makes the decision-making process intuitive. It would be enough to establish the size of each component in order to understand what the right decision is. Let's look at a case where the objective is to support strategic decisions. Let's say the issue at hand is to estimate the number of pizzas consumed in the USA per annum. Again, we could break this down by using a tree structure. The number of pizzas consumed in the USA per annum is dependent on the population of the USA. This needs to be further narrowed down by breaking it into the percentage of population that does not eat pizza, possibly due to health or religion, habit, and so on, and the percentage of population that eats pizza. This pizza-eating population can be further broken down into the percentage of heavy eaters, who eat once a week, percentage of regular eaters who eat once a month, and percentage of occasional eaters who eat pizza once per quarter. A structure like this allows you to immediately understand the dependencies between elements in the structure and makes it easier not to get lost. It would be enough to determine the size of each element in order to quickly complete the estimate. Let's now move on to structuring the problem. Breaking down a problem helps us quickly reach a solution. A complex business problem is invariably a collection of smaller subproblems. Once you identify the subproblems, it becomes easier to tackle them and simplifies the main problem. Subproblems can help us clearly define specific issues so that the solution becomes obvious. It is very useful to represent the structure graphically, as shown here. It is usually easy to visualize the structure as a tree. Segmenting subproblems leads to a cascade structure or a tree, which allows you to visualize the dependencies between those subproblems. At the core, or level 0, is the main problem that you are trying to solve. At the first level are key issues, or subproblems, which the main problem is a function of. Beyond this, you should further break down each node of this level into smaller subproblems. So, how do we break down our problem? We need to first understand the structure requirements. Once we understand them, we'll move on to discuss how different valid approaches can be constructed based upon them. Any structure must meet a set of 5 requirements: meatiness, level of consistency, materiality, simplicity, and actionability. Let's look at each of these in detail. The first requirement our structure must follow is that it should be MECE. On any day, in any given MBB office, a project manager will ask a young analyst, "Is this structure MECE?" So let's break this important concept down. MECE stands for mutually exclusive, or ME, and collectively exhaustive, or CE. Mutually exclusive implies that no element of your structure overlaps with any other. Collectively exhaustive means that when taken together, the elements of your structure cover all possible explanations or actions. Let's look at an example. How can we subdivide famous painters? A MECE division would be those born before World War II and those born after World War II. This division follows both the conditions. ME, the two groups are completely separate with no overlaps, and CE, when taken together, the two groups cover the whole population. A non-MECE division would have been to segment into Surrealist painters and Spanish painters. This is non-ME or ME, as it has overlaps. For example, Salvador Dali was both Spanish and a Surrealist. And it is non-C or CE, in that even when taken together, the two groups still do not cover the whole population. For example, Da Vinci was neither Spanish nor Surrealist. Next up, let's discuss level consistency. This is a simple idea. All subgroups should belong to the same logical category, that is, be subsets of the same set. In other words, if A and B are listed together, A cannot be a subset of B. For example, the USA, Germany, Italy, and Canada are all at the same level, as they are all countries. But marketing, G&A costs, and fixed costs are not at the same level, as marketing and G&A costs are subcategories of fixed costs. Let's work through an example. What could be the reason for a supermarket's decreasing profitability? A standard framework approach would ask you to look at financials and customers. Within financials, you would look at revenues and cost. In the customers group, you would further analyze the number of shopping trips and what they buy and so on. However, like most standard frameworks, this fails the level consistency test. All items listed under customers drive revenue, and therefore they cannot be in a different group from revenue. Our problem-driven approach will help you build a structure that is based upon what factor drives each element. As such, profit would be further broken down into revenues and costs. Revenues would further be broken down into number of shopping trips and the average basket size. This approach ensures that you don't miss out on the cost factor and also on further subdivisions of the nodes like number of shopping trips and average basket size. Your structure is your best friend when solving a case. You need to be able to use it and communicate it easily. Thus, you should spend time making sure it is simple. Simplicity is ensured by avoiding structures that are too complex and/or lead to overlaps. Let's look at an example. Pizza Hut wants to improve their sales. The main issue here is improvement in sales. One way to break this down would be to segment it into improvement in sales from big stores and improvement in sales from small stores. Each of these nodes can be further broken into increase in number of clients, increase in the number of times a client visits Pizza Hut, and opening more stores. Although MCC and level consistent, this structure is hard to explain and will lead to overlapping discussions. For example, whatever drives more visits in small stores will likely also do so in big stores. As such, you should try to simplify it. Let's look at a different structure for the same problem statement. The issue at hand is to grow sales or grow revenues. To do this, either we need to improve quantities, raise prices, or do both. The quantity improvement could be achieved in two ways: an increase in sales in existing markets or entering new markets. In order to improve sales in existing markets, we need to either increase the number of clients or increase the number of times a client visits Pizza Hut. This structure is fairly simple enough to explain, as it follows a logical thought process. It would make a hypothesis generation intuitive while solving the case. For example, loyalty cards to boost the number of visits per customer or international expansion to enter new markets. Unless you have a specific reason, you should avoid over-segmenting the problem. Remember that your time with the case is limited. Thus, you should make sure that every branch you discuss is important enough to warrant the interviewer's time. In the pizza case, an example of over-segmenting would be breaking down sales into improving the sales of pineapple pizzas and improving the sales of other products. Unless you have a specific hint in the case prompt about pineapple pizzas, for example, that 60% of the sales are pineapple pizzas, you shouldn't create a separate bucket for them. Instead, you should use your time to further segment the second branch, which in reality accounts for almost all of the sales. Materiality should be on your mind throughout the case, and will also be key in prioritizing your analysis, as we will discuss in the Lead the Analysis video. The final requirement of our structure that we need to keep in mind is actionability. In short, this means that when breaking down a problem, you should try to choose drivers which you have control of. In the pizza case, one could hypothetically break the improved sales parameters into increase amount of money people spend eating out and increase Pizza Hut's percentage share of the total money people spend eating out. This would be misleading and would throw the case off. We likely have no control over the overall amount of money people spend eating out. That is driven by macro factors, consumer sentiment, etc., so the first bucket will quickly be crossed out. As with materiality, the actionability concept will continue to be very important when you start to lead the analysis. Let's look at a different segmentation. In the pizza case, the sales can be improved by either increasing volumes or increasing prices, or both. Both the earlier segmentation and this one are correct. However, the drivers in this case are easier to identify and are measurable and actionable. Next, let's move on to how to segment the problem. There are several things that we need to keep in mind. The different segmentation drivers, whether we should take a mathematical or standard approach to the segmentation, and whether we should take a hypothesis-driven or an issue-based approach to breaking down the problem. Let's look at each of these three factors in detail. When segmenting a problem, we can use multiple drivers to break that problem down. The key is finding the one that works best. A few examples of drivers are financials, customer characteristics, value chain, geography, product lines, and company internal versus external market-driven factors. Let's look at each of these. Financial segmentation is particularly useful in profitability cases. Let's say the problem statement is that Google has started making a loss. A financial driver would be apt as either their revenues went down or their cost went up, or both of these things happened at once. Therefore, to improve profits, they need to look at two things: boosting revenues and/or decreasing costs. Customer characteristics work well in tackling marketing issues. Let's say the problem statement is that Netflix is losing customers. The customer characteristics of the segment that is most affected would help us find the root cause and fix it. So Netflix could either be losing customers who are over 25 years old and/or losing customers who are under 25 years old. This could help in narrowing down customer segments, their preferences, and the root cause for the customer loss, ultimately helping us to find a solution. Next, we look at value chain-based segmentation. This segmentation narrows down problems to a specific set of activities the company performs. Let's look at a problem statement. Apple has higher costs than its competitors. In a situation like this, a value chain-based breakdown of the issue into production, logistics, distribution would be useful. The rationale for this segmentation is that Apple might be less efficient in one or more of the above activity sets, thereby leading to higher production costs. Again, the choice of segmentation helps us identify the root cause of the issue. Geographical segmentation is useful when business models and issues vary across regions. Let's look at the problem statement, Walmart wants to boost its sales. Here, a geographic segmentation is useful as we know that Walmart is a global player. It can boost its sales either by increasing them in its current markets or by expanding into new markets. Product line-based segmentations are particularly useful in multi-product line companies. Let's say the problem statement is that British Airways is losing revenue. Here, a product line-based segmentation would be one of the logical approaches to use, as British Airways has multiple product segments. We could break down the loss in sales into short-haul revenue and long-haul revenue. Another way to segment is to look at internal versus external issues. This style of analysis helps us narrow down the problem and help figure out if the root cause originated within the company itself or if the issue is common across the industry. For the case where British Airways was losing revenues, another plausible way to approach would be to look at whether the total market is shrinking or if only British Airways is losing market share. We have looked at several ways to segment an issue. Now we arrive at the question, how do you decide which of these segmentation drivers to use? Depending on the problem we're facing, different approaches may be more or less useful. Always remember, there is no right or wrong approach. To select the best driver, ask yourself a few questions, including, how does this driver fit the problem? For example, if the issue is profitability, a financial segmentation of revenue versus cost will probably be useful. How comfortable am I with the resulting problem breakdown? Do I know enough about Google's value chain to try to break down their cost along the chain? Or would it be easier to take a financial approach looking at fixed versus variable costs? If a structure is not working for you, don't be afraid to change it, to take a different approach. There is no single approach which must be used. We can mix and match different segmentations at different levels. We purposely showed you that the British Airways problem could be solved using two different approaches, and this is true for most cases. Multiple approaches can be valid. Let's look at the British Airways case again. We could break down the decrease in revenues into decrease from short-haul and decrease from long-haul flights. This is the product line-based segmentation. Further, both short and long-haul revenues could be broken down into market size decrease and the market share decrease segmentation. This would be the internal versus external segmentation that we talked about. In this case, we see a mix of product-based segmentation with internal versus external segmentation. If the product segmentation doesn't work, that is, if we're losing revenues on both, you can attempt another segmentation like price versus quantity breakdown or economy class versus business class. We can see then that it is perfectly valid to mix segmentation drivers in different levels. Next, let's move on to comparing mathematical and standard approaches. Some problems are easier to break down in a mathematical way. A mathematical breakdown consists of describing an element using a mathematical operation between its sub-elements. This is the easiest and most effective method because it ensures that the structure is MCC. The logical connections in the issue tree are likely to be bulletproof as they are connected by mathematical operations, and additionally, blocks will be easily quantifiable, which is very desirable. This approach obviously works best if it is actually possible to decompose a problem mathematically. There are two very simple examples to show how mathematical segmentation can be used to break a problem down into sub-problems. Profit can be broken down into revenues minus costs. In the same manner, if we are investigating the reason for a drop in airline revenues, we can break that into the number of customers multiplied by the average ticket price. A mathematical breakdown can be used to achieve a higher degree of segmentation. In our airline example, for instance, we could estimate the number of customers by multiplying the number of flights with the number of seats and multiplying that by the average occupancy rate. The number of flights is further a function of number of flights per day into the number of days of operation. Similarly, the number of seats is a function of number of planes into the number of seats per plane. We could drill down on the average ticket price using a similar approach. The average ticket price is a function of the average business class ticket and the average economy class ticket price. The average ticket price can be calculated by multiplying the ticket price of a specific class with the percentage of seats in that class. This segmentation is a drill down of the revenue structure of an airline and should help us analyze the root cause of a drop in revenues by achieving a higher degree of segmentation. In the same way you can combine different segmentation drivers, you can also combine mathematical and non-mathematical breakdowns. For instance, let's say an airline sees decreasing profits. We could structure the issue by breaking down profits into revenues minus costs. The revenue could further a function of number of customers multiplied by the average ticket price. The result is that we have made a purely mathematical issue tree. Let's look at another way to structure the same problem, though. The profit could be segmented into a short-haul and long-haul profit. This is the product line segmentation. Now, we could use a mathematical approach to break down these nodes. For example, the profit from short-haul is equal to revenue minus cost from that segment. The revenue is further a function of the number of customers multiplied by the average ticket price. It is also perfectly okay to reverse the order of these blocks, depending on what we think is easier and makes more sense. On reversing the order for the same example, then, we could break profit down into revenue minus cost. Revenue could then be broken down as short-haul revenue plus long-haul revenue. We could further cascade our issue tree by multiplying the number of customers with the average ticket price to get the revenue for each product line. The important thing to realize is that there is not necessarily a right approach. You could choose a breakdown that seems logical to you based on the case prompt. If that structure doesn't work, don't be afraid to change it. Let's now examine hypothesis-based versus issue-based approaches to segmentation. Interested? Watch the full video and many more in the My Consulting Coach Academy, our end-to-end case and fit interview course, and learn to tackle problems in the same way real consultants do. Now, you may wonder, what is so special about the My Consulting Coach Academy? First, the idea behind it. 20 top ex-consultants from McKinsey, BCG, and Bain developed this course to set a new standard. We teach you to build tailored solutions to case problems rather than force-fitting some ready-made frameworks. Second, the breadth. We cover all topics related to the consulting interview, leaving nothing off the checklist. Required fundamentals, systematic case cracking, quick calculation tools, fit interview stories, and much more. We've got you covered. And finally, the active learning. We created more than 200 exercises to test your skills in the most critical areas of case interviews, including structure building, critical reasoning, analytical problems, and full cases.